Hello, dear friends. Opinion article. What is individual sovereignty? All freedom demands responsibility. Everyone talks about natural law. It is based on human nature. Natural law is the dictates of right reason. It is also based on common law. It is the uses and customs of each community. The I Am movement was born in Mexico in 2012. The Republic, Menda Lerenda, was another beginning. The true sovereignty is that of each human being. It began with the independent republic of my home. I am now the ascended being of the being I wish to be. Security is the typical excuse for stealing freedom. There is an international tribunal for natural justice, the National Court. Its goal is the Universal Digital Currency Reserve Foundation. The first asset-backed digital currency is called REVO. Let's start. It has suddenly become fashionable to talk about natural law, natural right, and individual sovereignty, something I have been decreeing every day for years. But this topic has got me with my underpants down, because I am not a lawyer, but a journalist. And the only thing a journalist knows how to do is to try to summarize the topic to make it easier for people to understand, because jurists lack the gift of conciseness, and simplicity that Baltasar Gracián talked about. Everyone wants to make a declaration of independence of the independent republic of my home. And I join this trend because our home is inviolable, except in the case of court order justified by flagrant crime. Another day I will talk about the people's public trust, of which the master Sigmund Bathory recently spoke on Inmaculada Fernandez's channel on Twitch, because it is a much more complicated issue. Politicians come and promise to everyone happiness, security, and lots of nonsense disguised as dreams and imaginary rights in exchange, of course, for subjecting everyone to their dictate, to their perception of morality, to their rules in short, and to their unappealable way of seeing and understanding life, without us having signed any individual contract with them or being asked our opinion. This is a new form of tyranny that smells of a totalitarian whiff. Definition. Freedom is the right not to be a slave, that is to say, the natural faculty that the human being has to act in one way or another. So he is responsible for his actions. Moreover, in supposedly democratic systems, freedom is considered a right of superior value, neither subject to nor coercively imposed on the wishes of others, which ensures the self-determination of human beings. In other words, that which allows someone to decide whether he wants to do something or not, makes him free, but also responsible for his actions, to the extent that he understands the consequences of them. All freedom demands responsibility, because great power demands great responsibility. I prefer the Greek concept of freedom called aletheia, which is more open and opposed to the Roman concept called libertas, which is more restricted. Security is the typical excuse to steal personal freedom that every tyrant uses. Aletheia is the philosophical concept that refers to the sincerity of facts and reality. Literally, the words mean that which is not hidden, that which is evident, and that which is true. It also refers to the unhiding of being. The term was used by the Greek pre-Socratic philosopher Parmenides of Elea in his poem On Nature. According to him, one can propose the domain of truth or aletheia to that of opinion or doxa. During the first half of the 20th century, Martin Heidegger recovered aletheia and developed the notion to the way it is known in contemporaneity, as an attempt to understand truth. Heidegger gave an etymological analysis to the term and gave the meaning to it as making evident. But I prefer the concept of freedom defined by Don Quixote de la Mancha. Freedom, in quotes, freedom, Sancho, is one of the most precious gifts given to human beings by the heavens, which with it cannot be equaled the treasures that the earth encloses nor the sea conceals. For freedom as well as for honor, one can and should venture one's life, and on the contrary, captivity is the greatest evil that can come to human beings. The first thing we must demand from the state is liberty, freedom to undertake, to trade in whatever currency we want, to own land, estates, or any kind of enterprise. With individual freedom, we can achieve any kind of sovereignty, because absolute sovereignty is sovereignty over your own life, the freedom to achieve your goals and undertake the model of life you want for you and for your loved ones. With this freedom, we can prosper and help all around us to prosper, instead of oppressing them as the government does. A free being is empathetic and compassionate by nature. I'm not psychopathic. The Menda Lerenda Republic. Last February, a Galician man claimed to be a diplomat of the Republic of Menda Lerenda to avoid arrest. He asked to call the consul of that country after being arrested in a town in Pontevedra and refusing to identify himself with his Spanish documentation. The Spanish lawyer Jorge Remel has been the main disseminator of this issue. Anyone can become a member of this republic by paying for an identification card that I have applied for. Its price has gone up from 50 to 70 euros. The Wandering Republic Menda Lerenda was proclaimed in 1999 and has its own constitution with 13 articles. It assures that its national borders are marked by the surface on which each of its sovereigns has contact. That is why it is wandering, and that its inviolable borders are those of its own physical contours. For all these reasons, each individual of Menda Lerenda must be considered as an independent republic in itself. The Menda Lerenda Wandering Republic is established as an individual sovereignty, mobile and recognized by other states as capable of acting with complete independence and in strict compliance with international law. You have here the only legalized and recognized identification that certifies your freedom. Any person can become a member of this organization, which also allows you to keep your nationality to speed up the bureaucracy. Each individual is the own territory of the Republic, as well as the place he or she occupies at a given moment. Excuse me. On the internet, the Wandering Republic Mendelerinda declares itself as a micronation officially proclaimed in 1999 and defines the individual as an independent republic in itself. It is in its postulates, it adds that it accepts as national territory the area occupied by its sovereign at any given moment without infringing on any other space or territory. According to its founding document, this republic allows to acquire the same denomination to anyone who wants to self-proclaim its independence. A sovereign state, according to international law, is a legal entity represented by a government that has sovereignty over a certain geographical area. International law defines sovereign states by 4 fundamental conditions: possession of a permanent population, a defined territory, a government, and the capacity to establish relations with other sovereign states. Theoretically, it is also considered that a sovereign state is not dependent on or subject to any other state or higher political power. Origin. The creators of the site placed the foundation of Menda Lerenda Republic in 1999, specifically in October 14, when the competent ministry of a member country of the European Union was notified of the proclamation of independence with a document that was officially admitted. That ministry was Spanish, the Ministry of Culture and Sport, and the document was a request for registration in the Registry of Intellectual Property in Barcelona, a bureaucratic procedure to record the rights over a work, performance or artistic production. On January 25, the Department of Culture approved the inscription in an exchange of documentation that the founders of the Republic interpret as de jure, accrediting the interrelation of both parties, and they understand defining them as a state. In addition, the document adds, with respect to its bearer, in quotes, "My inviolable borders are those of my physical contour, being the physical ones of greater scope and supply, not recognizing other authorities nor foreign laws other than those based on honesty, common sense, and constructive collaboration." Close quotes. The country is constituted by each individual, which is the territory of the Republic, as well as the place it occupies at any given moment. They also remind that no credential serves as a universal safe conduct for outrages outside the law, making it clear that their country is governed by the legality in force in Spain or in the country where they live. Definitions. The natural law is the opinion of right reason that prescribe what is to be done or what is to be omitted. The natural law consists of the grasping of certain patterns of conduct as good that are based on human nature and on the common law of customs and usages. Customary law is a set of customs, practices, and beliefs accepted as binding rules of conduct of a community. It is an intrinsic part of the social and economic systems and way of life of indigenous peoples and local communities. Natural law is an ethical and legal doctrine that postulates the existence of rights grounded or determined in human nature. It advocates the existence of a set of universal rights, prior, superior, and independent of written law, positive law, and customary law. It is called jus naturalism to the group of thinkers or schools of thought that are inspired by natural law. Individual sovereignty. Sovereignty is the unsurpassed loftiness of excellence in any immaterial order. A sovereign is that human being who exercises or possesses supreme and independent authority over himself. Self-ownership, also called individual sovereignty or self-ownership, is the idea that the individual is the owner of his own person, or that he has a natural or moral right to control his body and life. This principle is also used as the ethical basis for the right to private property. There are various currents that approve and defend individual freedom in conjunction with the principle of self-ownership, in that they defend the right to define oneself freely in one's individuality, and are against being controlled or forced to live in a certain way in favor of the idea that it is only one who decides how one should define oneself in relation to being, doing, having, and giving. The person possesses himself fully, at least by default, and as long as he does not legitimately contract otherwise. Each human being is the owner of his mind and body, since he is the first to use them and the only one who can really control them. When sovereignty is placed in the hands of the group, in reality a considerable portion of it is being taken away from us. Sovereignty does not belong to an ambiguous all of us, but to each of us individually. Sovereignty is the property of each human being and not of an abstract entity. Individual sovereignty empowers us to do absolutely whatever we wish without harming anyone, with the sole exception of those things that harm another. To do in this context include, of course, not to do. This basic principle is formally recognized by almost all democratic institutions, but it is systematically violated and reduced for the sake of a diffuse general interest that often masks the particular interest of its various interpreters in the field of ideas or in the field of politics. Interpreters who have no shame or embarrassment of limiting our sovereignty to favor not the objective restoration of the violated sovereignty of another, but those interests that at their discretion or when coincide with those of the group or the majority of its members. The freedom of each individual doesn't end where that debatable euphemism begins, which in reality serves as an excuse for the interpreting elites to do and undo as they please, but it really ends where the inalienable individual sovereignty of another begins, but of another with a name and surname, not of an abstract entity. The fundamental consequences of individual sovereignty are our indisputable self-government and our full power over our property. Principle of non-aggression. A fundamental principle of natural law is the principle of non-aggression or non-coercion or non-invasion. It is an ethical and legal principle, parallel to the principle of self-ownership, which holds that it should be lawful for any individual to do whatever he wishes, provided he does not initiate or threaten to initiate physical violence against another individual or his property. It asserts that coercion is inherent, illegitimate, and should be rejected. The principle does not oppose legitimate defense against aggression. On the contrary, it supports and legitimizes it. Non-aggression is a principle that typically includes property as part of the owner. To attack someone's property is to attack the person, because his property is of importance to him. Thus, the principle leads to the rejection of the theft, vandalism, murder, and fraud. When applied to governments, it has been adopted to prevent many policies, including aggressive taxation and military projects. When taken to its logical consequence, it calls for protecting people from aggression on their individual sovereignty. I am movement. The Eastern philosophy of Hindu Advaita Vedanta emphatically states that I am God, and since other sentient beings are also divine, we owe them the same respect as ourselves. This is not a megalomania, not a pretentious delusion of grandeur of an autocrat, but a true spiritual nature. It consists of cosmic identification with the universe, love for all beings, and compassion for the suffering of others. The I Am 132 student movement that emerged in Mexico on May 11th, 2012, caused a stir around the world. This group began to organize on social networks after a protest against the then PRI presidential candidate Enrique Peña Nieto. That day they questioned the former president. They chased him inside the Universidad Iberoamericana when he went to give a lecture as part of his campaign, and they protested against the biased management of the media and the lack of plurality. The Yo Soy movement, I Am movement, was a citizens' movement made up mostly of higher education students, both from public and private institutions living in Mexico, as well as residents and sympathizers in more than 50 cities around the world. The movement initially sought the democratization of the media, the creation of a third debate between the presidential candidates, and the rejection of the media imposition of Enrique Peña Nieto as a candidate in 2012 presidential elections. Treaty of International Tribunal for Natural Justice, the National Court for Natural Justice. The treaty and the Constitution of the International Court for Natural Justice were signed and sealed into law in a formal ceremonial sitting marking the inauguration of the International Tribunal for Natural Justice on June 15, 2015. The inauguration was held at Westminster Hall in London and coincided with the 800th anniversary of the promulgation of Magna Carta. It is based on 5 principles. First one, the law in its purest forms. I repeat, the law in its purest form requires no more and no less that each of us does no harm to anyone. Second, damage in any form is only caused by natural persons, regardless of whether the natural person acts under corporate dictation, false legality, or otherwise. Third, harm in any form is only suffered by natural persons, regardless of whether or not the harm suffered may have been caused by the natural person's artificial externalities. Fourth, neither corporate immunity nor false legality can indemnify a natural person from harm caused by a third party. Fifth, no natural person is bound by the judgment of an illegitimate tribunal where he has not given consent, as the party involved with full knowledge of the manner in which this consent is given. You can sign the treaty mandating the establishment of the International Court of Natural Justice in a link. It is in the box of commentaries. The document begins with this sentence in quotes: I, a human being, hereby authorize the International Court of Natural Justice by my ratification of this, the Treaty of the International Court of Natural Justice, voluntarily, freely, and without any external influence, duress or coercion, having reached the age of majority and being in full control of my mental and physical faculties. Restoration. Once again, the time has come to restore the original banking and intrajudicial system, albeit updated with the most current and advanced computer, banking, and accounting systems. The judges of the International Court of Natural Law Justice, representing the original systems, are currently engaged in a process of redistributing historical assets and accounts for the betterment of humankind. These judges have sanctioned and authorized the Universal Digital Currency Reserve Foundation as part of the new Digital Reserve for Global and Intergalactic Currencies. Other major adjectives include the signing of global projects in the areas of providing food, water, energy, and housing for all peoples. The future of the International Natural Law Tribunal of Justice lies in a world where there is a paradigm shift in people's awareness of all things positive, where justice is actually very real as corruption in the system continues to be fought, and people begin to believe in a positive future for humankind. A future world where big projects begin to change the landscape of the planet, and more people begin to benefit from the redistribution of wealth from the 1% to the 99% to achieve a more equitable world. More bankers, politicians, and war criminals will be brought to justice so that countries and their people regain faith in their laws and legal systems. We encourage more humanitarian entities to begin to have a positive effect on global issues such as food, energy, and water, as well as property and shelter for poverty-stricken areas of the earth. Tribalists will remain determined to protect people and their nations, to ensure that humanity not only survives but thrives. Digital currency. With this goal in mind, the Universal Digital Currency Reserve Foundation has launched the first digital currency fully backed by historical assets and treasures called REVO. REVO. It is based on the asset-backed accounts that provided the delivery of global projects to help humankind not only survive but also thrive. The other coins on the list of official full asset-backed currencies will be released at a later date. All of this is of a great informative value, but I do not advise anyone to invest their money in it until it is entirely clear, because I have many doubts. As of July 7th, 2017, the digital currencies issued by the Universal Digital Currency Reserve Foundation as the exclusive official body issuer of all digital currencies become fully asset-backed as sanctioned and mandated by the signing of the agreements with the International Court of Justice of Natural Law and the 19 regulatory authorities and bodies under the direct control and guidance of the International Courts of Justice, the International Criminal Court, etc., officially. All of these are supported by the Digital Asset Reserve, known as the Digital Reserve. The Universal Digital Currency Reserve Foundation is an entity created by the United Humanitarian Trust in conjunction with the Digital Reserve, which is the official digital currency issuer for the 4 chosen digital currencies in various denominations. All currencies are tracked, not pegged to the euro, giving us the flexibility to track other currencies for the benefit of all us in times of financial crisis around the world. The currencies issued are as follows: REVO, Euro, Centum, and Milia. 1 REVO is worth 10 euros. This is done in the various denominations available, so that the foundation can allow all levels of people in poverty, the unbanked as they call them, to be accommodated and to allow microfinance to flourish, to help lift some 3 billion people out of poverty and allowing them to participate in global recovery and prosperity. It also allows all levels of trade and finance to take place, from individuals to SMEs, from large corporations to traders, from bank to governments, and finally for foundations to fund large projects globally without being hindered by anyone or anything. But this will have to be seen and trust no one yet. Don't trust in it yet. Thanks a lot, dear friends.